If you think the 1960s were nothing but classics, then this countdown is going to sting. This was also the decade of gimmicks, quick cancellations, and strange sitcom experiments that aged fast. Some of these shows were attacked by critics. Some were mocked for decades. Some just vanished because the audience never showed up. Here are 15 infamous misfires from the era told like a documentary countdown. Number 15, Love on a Rooftop, 1966. This one is not remembered because it is offensively terrible. It is remembered because it feels like a lesser echo of better stories. A newlywed couple tries to survive in San Francisco on a tiny salary, while rich parents hover. It is meant to be romantic and modern and light, but it often plays like a watered-down attempt to bottle the same energy audiences got from sharper urban comedies and stage-inspired romances. The episodes lean heavily on cute struggles, money trouble, apartment trouble, parent trouble. That can work if the writing digs into personality and tension. Here it often stays on the surface. The jokes are gentle. The conflicts resolve quickly. The show wants to be breezy, but breezy can become empty if you do not add bite. It also sits in a competitive era. Sitcoms were loud and high concept in the mid-60s. A low-key newlywed story can get drowned out. Even with a charming cast, the series never becomes a must-watch identity. It fades into the category of shows that were not disasters on set, but still failed to grab the culture. In a worse list context, it becomes the kind of series people call bland, the cruelest insult in television. Number 14, The Baileys of Balboa, 1964. This one looks harmless at first. Coastal setting, marina vibes. A family living near wealthy yacht people. The problem is that it never finds a sharp point of view. It wants to be class comedy and seaside adventure and family warmth all at once. Instead, it becomes soft and muddy. Scenes drift. Conflict feels gentle when it should bite. Characters feel like types instead of people. The show also carries the weight of being designed to chase a trend. The premise grows from network thinking about what audiences wanted after other nautical comedies hit big. So, it feels engineered. You can sense the committee in the structure. The stories keep returning to the same basic friction. Regular folks versus richer neighbors. That can work with great writing. Here it often plays like a sketch idea that never becomes a full voice. When a sitcom lives or dies on rhythm, this series struggles. The jokes do not snap. That is how a show becomes forgettable, and then later gets labeled as one of those series that simply should have been retooled or never launched at all. Number 13, Pistols and Petticoats, 1966. A Western sitcom about a gunslinging family in a town called Wretched, Colorado. It sounds like it could be fun, but it arrives as a strange tonal hybrid. It wants frontier action and family comedy at the same time. That blend is delicate. If you go too broad, you lose the Western stakes. If you go too Western, you lose the sitcom bounce. This series keeps wobbling. Historically, it is remembered for brutal ratings. It is often described as the worst-rated show of its season in the Nielsen rankings. That kind of label sticks. The show also becomes shadowed by tragedy. Anne Sheridan died during the run, and the series continued without her in several episodes. That gives the whole project a haunted feel in retrospect. The premise also has a built-in repetition trap. Outlaws threaten. The family outshoots them. The sheriff is annoyed. Reset. When comedy relies on the same loop, it needs fresh characters and escalating situations. Here, the loop feels tight and limiting. You can see the writers reaching for new twists and finding the same wall. So, Pistols and Petticoats ends up as a reminder that genres do not automatically mix just because a network wants them to. Sometimes the cocktail tastes wrong, no matter how much you stir it. Number 12, My Living Doll. 1964. This is one of those concepts that screams 1960s fantasy sitcom. A scientist creates a lifelike android woman and hands her to a psychiatrist friend for safekeeping and education. The episodes follow the robot trying to learn human behavior, while the lead tries to keep her secret. On paper, it is a machine for misunderstandings. In practice, it feels unsettling and dated. The series leans on the idea of teaching the perfect woman. That phrase alone tells you why modern viewers flinch. The comedy often comes from obedience and literal interpretation. The jokes can feel less like clever sci-fi comedy and more like a weekly reminder of an era where TV thought control and conformity were cute. That does not mean it has no charm. It has moments of playful innocence, but the core idea keeps pulling it back into uncomfortable territory. It also suffers from premise repetition. Each week must reset. Each week must protect the secret. Each week must do another lesson in normal life. When a sitcom repeats its teaching loop too often, the audience starts to feel the gears turning. My Living Doll becomes a show you study more than you enjoy. Number 11. OK Crackerby, 1965. A billionaire from Oklahoma moves his family into high society Palm Beach and simply buys anything that blocks his path. That is the central gag. He is rejected. He purchases the hotel. He is judged. He throws money at the problem. For a few minutes, that is amusing. Then you realize the joke can only play one way. The show wants to poke at snobbery and class rules, but it often feels like it is admiring the power fantasy more than satirizing it. The rich man wins because he is richer than everyone else. That is the punchline again and again. Without sharper, writing it becomes repetitive. Even the supporting characters feel trapped inside the same loop. React to the outrageous wealth. Reset. Repeat. Sitcoms can be built on a strong fish-out-of-water idea, but they still need growth. They still need relationships that change and deepen. Here, the premise sits like a giant statue in the middle of every scene. It blocks complexity, so the series is remembered as a loud concept that did not translate into lasting comedy. Number 10. Camp Run-Amok, 1965. A boys' summer camp with a staff that barely functions. That is the arena. Camp Run-Amok tries to squeeze sitcom energy out of counselors who dislike the job and kids who exist mostly as background noise. The comedy focus is not childhood wonder. It is adult incompetence. That choice gives the show a strange, cold vibe. You are watching grown people trapped in a place they resent. The setting should be a goldmine. Rival camps, summer pranks, camp traditions. But the series often plays like a collection of staff gags with a camp costume on top. The commander figure is gruff and angry. The counselors bumble. The rhythm becomes predictable. And because it is set in an isolated camp world, it struggles to introduce fresh stakes. What lingers is the sense that the show was chasing a trend. Youth settings were popular, wacky workplaces were popular. So, this series tries to merge them, but the merge never becomes magical. It becomes noisy. It becomes episodic in the weakest way. By the end, it feels like a time capsule of sitcom formulas being tested in a new location and failing to spark. Number 9. My Mother, the Car, 1965. This is the title people still cite when they want to prove television once lost its mind. A man buys an antique car and discovers his dead mother has been reincarnated into it. She talks to him through the radio. That is the whole hook. The show tries to play it sweet. It tries to play it silly. It often lands as baffling. The problem is not only the weirdness. Weird can work. The problem is the emotional logic. The premise asks you to accept grief as a gag and then asks you to laugh when the mother car meddles in romance and daily life. That is a hard balance. If you lean into emotion, it becomes sad. If you lean into farce, it becomes cruel. The series swings between those tones and never fully controls them. It also becomes trapped by its own headline. Every episode must remind you of the concept. Every episode must find a reason for the car to interfere. So instead of character growth, you get premise maintenance. That is why it became a legendary punchline, and why later critics often point to it as the peak of gimmick sitcom excess in the decade. Number 8. The Pruitts of Southampton, 1966. A rich family secretly goes broke, but keeps living like royalty because the truth would embarrass everyone. That is the premise. It is already shaky. Then the show adds borders and wacky side characters and tries to stretch it into a weekly parade of chaos. It is built like a mansion on sand. There is a reason this series shows up on famous worst of lists. It was literally ranked on TV Guide worst show list territory. That does not happen by accident. The tone never matches the star. The writing tries to force a Lucille Ball-style vehicle for Phyllis Diller, but the fit is awkward. Diller is a powerhouse stand-up personality. Sitcom rhythms demand a different kind of engine. The show keeps trying to reshape her into a standard sitcom mom figure, and the result feels unnatural. When the title changes mid-season, it signals panic. Networks do that when they sense the audience is leaving. The series becomes a story of scrambling. It did not. So, it remains a cautionary tale, a show with a big name and a big setup that still could not find a stable heartbeat. Number 7. The Hathaways, 1961. The pitch alone tells you why this sitcom still gets dragged today. A normal-looking family on paper, a husband and wife trying to keep their home life stable, and 3 kids who are not kids at all. They are chimpanzees. The Hathaways tries to sell that idea as wholesome comedy, but the tone never settles. It is not a smart satire. It is not a warm family story. It is a novelty act stretched into a weekly series. Every episode has to build itself around the same basic trick. How do you hide the truth? How do you explain the chaos? How do you keep the animals from exposing the premise? That means characters stop feeling like people and start feeling like handlers. The jokes become reactions. The stories become excuses. Even if you enjoy oddball television, the show can feel like it is chasing laughs with noise instead of wit. It also lands in that awkward space where the gimmick is the entire identity. When the surprise is gone, there is nothing left. That is why it is remembered less as a sitcom and more as a strange artifact from a time when networks would try anything. Number 6. Mickey, 1964. Mickey has star power. Mickey Rooney is the selling point. The setup is simple. A retired businessman inherits a luxury hotel and decides to run it. That sounds like an easy sitcom engine. Guests arrive, problems pop up, staff chaos follows. But the show never locks into a clean identity. Is it farce? Is it warm comedy? Is it workplace madness? It keeps shifting. Part of what makes it feel cursed in hindsight is how quickly real-life tragedy hangs over it. The series co-starred Sammy Tong as the hotel manager, and his death during the run became part of the story of the show itself. After that, The project feels like it is limping. The momentum disappears. The audience drifts. The network cancels. Even if you strip away the tragedy, the sitcom still reads like a vehicle searching for a road. Rooney brings energy, but the scripts do not build a world that can match him. A great star in a weak structure can actually highlight the weakness, because you keep waiting for the show to become what it promised. So Mickey ends up remembered as a failed attempt to bottle a legend instead of a series that created its own legacy. Number 5, Captain Nice, 1967. This is a superhero sitcom created to ride the Batman wave. A timid police chemist becomes a costumed hero, and the show plays the idea for camp laughs. The timing is everything here. When a trend explodes, networks rush to copy it. Captain Nice feels like that rush. It is clever in spots, but it always feels like it is chasing someone else's lightning. The comedy leans on an unwilling hero. The character does not want to be bold. That can be funny. But in a superhero parody, you still need energy. You still need escalation. This series often feels mild. The jokes are polite. The villains feel soft. The show sits between parody and standard sitcom without fully committing to either. It also had direct competition and comparison. Another camp superhero sitcom aired the same season. When a show becomes the second choice, it is hard to build a fan base. So Captain Nice ends up remembered as a curiosity from that moment when superheroes flooded television, and many of them sank instantly. It is less a classic and more a footnote that proves trends can create quick content, but not always lasting comedy. Number 4, Mr. Terrific, 1967. If Captain Nice is the mild copy, then Mr. Terrific is the frantic copy. The premise is pure camp. A gas station attendant becomes a government crime fighter by swallowing a power pill. The pill gives him strength and the ability to fly in a ridiculous way. The tone is broad and cartoonish. It wants you to laugh at the cheapness and the awkward heroism. But the show collapses under its own silliness. The missions feel repetitive because the format is fixed. Take pill, gain powers, race to solve case, lose powers at the worst time, scramble, reset. That is the episode machine. It can be fun for a while, then it becomes predictable. And when predictability hits a parody series, it dies fast because parody needs surprise. The series also arrives in a crowded landscape. Spy spoofs, monster comedies, fantasy domestic shows. Audiences already had high-concept sitcoms everywhere. Mr. Terrific had to fight for attention, and it could not. The camp superhero craze was real, but awareness does not equal loyalty. People might sample and then leave, so the show survives as a symbol of trend panic. Number 3, Good Morning World, 1967. A radio station sitcom about 2 morning disc jockeys in Los Angeles should have been a perfect workplace comedy. The setting offers endless guest chaos, celebrities, callers, management pressure, ego clashes. But the show never finds the exact frequency it needs. It tries to be a Dick Van Dyke-style blend of work and home, but the balance feels forced. It is also famous for what happens next in pop culture. Goldie Hawn appears here early in her career, soon after she explodes into a very different kind of comedy stardom. That makes this series feel like a stepping stone rather than a destination. People remember it because of who passed through, not because of the episodes themselves. The series has talented creators and a strong premise, but something in the execution comes off stiff. The characters are drawn in broad strokes. The plots can feel like standard workplace templates. And in a time when TV comedy was getting weirder and louder, this one sits in the middle. Number 2, The Ugliest Girl in Town, 1968. This sitcom is built on a disguise. A man pretends to be a female model so he can stay close to the woman he loves in London. That is the engine. In the late 60s, that premise was treated as farce. Today it reads as an uncomfortable time capsule. The humor depends on confusion and deception and gender-based misunderstanding. That kind of comedy ages fast when the writing is not smart enough to justify it. Even in its own era, the show struggled. It ran for a short time and never became a hit. That suggests the audience either rejected the premise or simply did not care. When a sitcom asks viewers to accept a risky disguise plot every week, it must be razor sharp. It must have real character layers. This series often relies on the same panic beats. Will he be found out? Will someone flirt? Will the truth explode? Reset. The London setting is a cool idea, and the production did film there, but a location cannot save a weak comic spine. What remains is the reputation. A show that feels like the kind of pitch executives approve because it sounds like instant comedy. Number 1. The Debbie Reynolds Show, 1969. This is the painful one, because Debbie Reynolds is not the problem. The problem is the trap of building a sitcom that imitates a better older formula without reinventing it. The show casts Reynolds as a housewife who craves more excitement while her husband works as a sports writer. That domestic restlessness is familiar sitcom territory. The series leans into a Lucy-style vibe, but imitation is not creation. Behind the scenes, the series becomes notorious for network and sponsor conflict. Reynolds reportedly objected to cigarette advertising tied to the program, and the situation turned into a messy fight that affected the show's future. When business drama bleeds into production, it often poisons a sitcom. The energy shifts from building a second season to surviving each week. On screen, the material can feel safe and repetitive. The character wants more. She schemes. She creates chaos. Things reset. It is not that the structure is wrong. It is that the scripts do not carve a unique voice for Reynolds. She deserved a show built around her specific charm. Instead, she gets a vehicle that keeps comparing itself to a legend. The 1960s gave us television legends, but it also gave us these cautionary tales. Sitcoms built on gimmicks can burn bright and die fast. If you enjoyed this countdown, like and subscribe for more forgotten TV history. And tell me in the comments which 60s sitcom you think aged the worst.